Oh, yeah, I didn't have sponsors. It was, there was a couple of sponsors I had that gave me product, but there was no one really giving me any money. And, every now and again in the 20 years I was on tour, I'd find a sponsor here and there, but pretty much most of it was self-funded. And, there's something my mum always taught me. There's a positive in every negative. And the positive was I don't think I would have been as successful as I was if I had the sponsors. But
Yes.
I know I needed to win to survive.
Are you ready, boys? Start swimming.
That's Pauline Menczer. I'm Jamie Brisick, and this is Soundings, brought to you by the Surface Journal. The Journal is a member-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from Costa Sunglasses, FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. More like a book than a magazine, the Journal delivers 136 pages of independent storytelling every 8 weeks, covering the people, culture, travel, and art of surfing. To learn more and to subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. Born in 1970, raised in Bondi Beach, Australia, Pauline Menczer found her way to the surfboard at age 14. Actually, it was half a surfboard, a recently snapped hand-me-down from her brother. 4 years later, she won the 1988 World Amateur Champs, hopped on the ASP World Tour, and finished the year ranked 5th overall. I first met Pauline at this time. 5'2", she was small in stature but towering in spirit and fortitude. For much of her life, Pauline suffered from sometimes crippling rheumatoid arthritis, but you'd have never known it from her surfing. Loose, springy, a hurler of tail, Pauline, or Naughty Pauls as her friends called her, won lots of events. In 1993, she won what seemed like a long overdue world title. Pauline has appeared in many surf videos, including 1998's Blue Crush, the surf video, not the feature film, 2001's Peaches, the core of women's surfing, and 2004's Surfabout Down Under. She's the unofficial star of the 2021 documentary Girls Can't Surf. An advocate for women's surfing and a champion of underdogs, Pauline was inducted into the Australian Surfing Hall of Fame in 2018. So welcome to the show, Pauline.
Thank you. Good to see you, Jamie.
You too. We go way back, and, having spent a lot of time in Australia, I got to know Bondi Beach quite well, and I think that's kind of where you came of age, yeah?
Totally. Like, I was absolutely a city girl, and it was quite crazy growing up in Bondi because of, it was called Scum Valley back then, so it was pretty wild to be part of, a tough city to grow up in, really.
It sounds like it. I know that there's in your memoir, you wrote about kind of getting into it with one of the local boys and experiencing the kind of like grommet hazing, I guess it might be called.
Yeah. So that was grommet initiations, and it used to happen to everyone pretty much, but I felt that because I was a young girl, I got picked on a bit more. And yeah, in my book, I do talk about one of the stories of one of the kids coming along, and I dropped in on him, but he'd already fallen off. And so, like, while he was falling off, I paddled for the wave. And then because he was being all macho and telling all his mates that I burnt him and I ruined his wave and all this kind of stuff. So him and his friends grabbed me and chucked me into the men's toilet in the trough. And they're just like, you got to pay your dues, that's how it is. And that kind of stuff actually happened pretty regular.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think it's coming from California. I think there was a version of that, but maybe not as extreme, because I remember talking to surfers from Narrabeen, and there was like the grommet pole where kids would get hung up there when they're, hung up there and left when they were young. But does that still go down now, or is that a bygone era?
No, I mean, now you'd get sent to jail for half the stuff that used to happen to us back then. So it's way more calm. it happened everywhere. It wasn't just Bondi, but I guess it happened a lot more where the beaches were busy. So if someone got annoyed with you, they'd just take care of business. And so, it's not a good thing for them to do things like that, but I felt that it really taught the younger generation respect. So they were very careful what they did because they knew there was consequences. Whereas nowadays they're just, smart Alex and have no respect, paddling around the inside. That didn't happen back then, or something would happen to you. Whereas now they're really cheeky in the surf and say whatever they want and can get away with it.
Yeah, it's changed so radically. So that environment, we'd be looking at what we're talking sort of early 80s, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I'd say for me, sort of more late 80s.
Okay. And who were the kind of guiding lights, or who are the surfers you looked up to at that time?
Well, there wasn't many female surfers where I was, but there was one in particular, Kathy Anderson, and her brother was Spot Anderson, and they were a big part of the surfing community down there, and they knew everybody. And they were pretty crazy and used to, crazy on land and crazy in the water. And so I think I was drawn to them because they just went for it. And I remember, not surfing for a very long time, and Kath's like, right, Grommet, you're old enough, we're going out on this surf. And it was just gigantic Bondi, and you couldn't even paddle out, it was that big. So they're going, just no worries, Grommet, we'll just go out the southern end off the point. And if you see Bondi now, you'd go, why would you even paddle out there to catch a wave? It was just ridiculous. And I remember they both caught a wave quite early on, so I was like left out there in these massive waves to come in. So scared. But at the time I was just thinking they're nuts bringing me out here, but I'm glad that I had that kind of upbringing and thrown in everything, because it made me be very brave when I was on tour.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. At what point did you realize you wanted to be a pro surfer?
I guess main time was there was a professional event at Bondi Beach, and it was the first professional event I'd seen. And I was kind of a bit bummed that I didn't really understand what professional surfing was back then, but I was bummed that I wasn't invited, because it was like this big event, at my beach. And I'll never forget that I was in the water, and I looked like a little boy because I had short hair and, surfed really well at that time. And I remember the commentator saying, that little boy, get out of the contest area. And I still kept surfing because they're saying the little boy to get out. And I stayed out there, and then Kathy Anderson comes running down and goes, Grommet, get out of the water. They're talking about you. Get out. And so then I sat up on the beach and watched the event, and I was watching how the women surfed, and I know how I surf myself. And I'm like, wow, this is what I can do. Like, I'd love to do this. And so I really feel that event in particular just made me have a goal. I'm thinking, if they can do this for a living. And then I also remember a camera crew seeing this little girl surfer sitting there. So they came and interviewed me, and they said, would you want to be a pro surfer? And I said, yeah. And they're like, what is it that you'd want? Is it the fame, the money? And I'm like, oh, the whole lot. And so because of that interview, and she talked about the fame and the money, I thought that, that's where it was all at. There's going to be fame and money, and a great way to make living is from surfing. And little did I know at that time.
Incredible. Yeah, I had a really similar experience when I was 14, and it was 1979, and the Sunkist Pro came to Malibu, and I got to see all the pro surfers who were in the magazines at the time. And Buttons Kaluhio Kalani won the event, and I remember that changed everything for me. I just knew that's what I want. And in my case, I think, obviously, like, it was. I think it still is in many ways, but it was so kind of sexist at that time, and there was actually no women's division in the contest I'm talking about. But it was still like, even back then, it was a sort of illegitimate way to make a living. It wasn't something my parents were excited about when I told them what I wanted. Very different to what it is today. But I would imagine even more so for you, like the person on the news saying you want to get the fame and the glory and what have you, but there obviously wasn't a lot at that time. What was the world that you stepped into when you started competing? What was it like? What was the sort of path forward in terms of getting sponsors and making your way as a pro?
Well, it was actually an interesting question because when I first started, there was no money in the amateur days. And so even to get to the amateur events, I would go to school and ask the school, like, is it okay if I sell cakes at the school and do mufti days to help raise money to get to these events? And so, like, you know, even competing in just the amateur events, a lot of the kids' parents would pay for them to go to Western Australia or, you know, different states. And I came from a very poor family, so I couldn't ask for that kind of money from them. And so I did that, and I used to collect cans and, you know, just whatever I could to try and get to these events. And then when I turned professional, I was very lucky that because I was just like the new young hotshot coming along, I got sponsored by an actually insurance company who was sponsoring the event. So my very first year on tour, I had enough money to pay for the tour. It was quite easy, and I really did think it was all fine. And then my first event in France, when I saw the check, I think it was 4,000 US, and I saw the guy's check, I was like, what? Look at how different it is. This is crazy. I can't believe that there's, you know, such a difference in prize money. And then it wasn't until I was there for a few years and starting to see how it all runs that I was like, wow, it's so male orientated. And then, you know, each year, the more and more I was there, the more I could see, like, we went through a recession at one time and, you know, all the guys just wanted to get rid of the girls because they're thinking, you know, we're not getting the money because the girls are here and we want that money. And so, you know, I feel like it got a little bit nastier then, and you didn't feel like as a team together. It was just like them against us. And then, you know, when we'll go to events, and I can't tell you how many times that, like, the tide would get too high or the wind would come up and they go, okay, let's put the women on now. And it happens so often, or like, no, we're cancelling the men today, but we'll put the women on. And so, you know, there was many times where I just got over it, and I'm not saying to the other girls, just don't paddle out. Like, you know, why should we paddle out if the guys aren't going out? And unfortunately, there'd always be sort of like one girl that was like sponsored by the event, and so they would get scared and go, no, I've got to go out. And then finally, you know, in South Africa, everyone that was in the heat just said, yeah, we're not going out. There's no waves. And so, you know, from that point on, everyone realised that we can stick up for each other.
What did it feel like at that time when it was just so clearly, you know, sexist for lack of, like, that? That's the only thing you can call it, really. I mean, it was just so clearly unfair to the girls, and they were treated as you all were treated as sort of second-class citizens. What was that like?
It was really frustrating because, you know, we felt like we were just as good as the guys, and, you know, of course we surf different because we don't have the same power the men do. And, you know, like, I remember at Huntington Beach when they stuck us out and they decided to put the women's bikini contest on at the same time. So then there was always a distraction every time the women were on. And then even stuff like we would arrive at a contest and they would have parking for the men and not enough for the women. So you know how they have reserved parking at the events?
Yes.
And so it was really frustrating many, many times, and there was never-ending fights to try and make it fair. And then at one point, the guys wanted us to do a separate tour to the men, but we knew if there was a separate tour, then we would just get dropped from all the events because there was a rule. They had to have a rule in place that where there's a men's event, there's a women's event, because they just kept trying to drop us at so many events.
So you're up against that, which is just a sort of fact of life at that time on the world tour. And then you also, I know that you were diagnosed with arthritis at quite a young age, like long before typically someone would get arthritis. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
So, yeah, it was quite hard because when I was 10, I kept getting hurt playing sport, and, you know, I was doing judo, and then every time I'd fall on the floor, I'd hurt and not understand why. And then at one point, at one point my knees got really, really swollen, And my mum's like, right, I'm taking you to the doctors to find out what's going on. And then the doctors didn't really know, so I ended up going to the hospital, and then they realised that I had arthritis. And so from a really young age, I was always getting put on, like going to the hospital and getting put on like aspirins and disprins and all kinds of medicine to try and help get better. And it was really hard. Like, you know, I couldn't do all the sports all my friends did. And then when I surfed, I did feel a lot better mentally. I was still in quite a lot of pain, but it was just my escape from it all. So I found that surfing was really good for it. As long as I didn't go too long.
And was it a kind of soreness? What did the actual arthritis pain feel like?
If I was to explain it, it's kind of like maybe doing a triathlon and not training for it, and how sore you feel the next day. It's kind of like that. Or if you were to slam your fingers in a car door and how they would feel after smashing them in the car door the next day. It kind of felt like ice, and if you bend them, they would break. So really incredibly painful.
And you were sort of battling that the entire time you were on the tour.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that I had breaks where it would come and go. So I found that eating really well helped. And then when it would come really bad, I'd have to be on, you know, quite strong medicines. And I'd always have to have like doctor's certificates to make sure that it was all okay with the, you know, sporting affiliation of what medicine I was taking. And it was really hard, like just being on that kind of stuff. And I'd have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to make sure that my body was as loose as it could be if I was in an earlier heat. So I remember each time I saw the draw or found out when we were surfing, I'm like, please be on later, because it would be a massive difference. A few more hours, I was always a lot better. It's kind of like your body defrosts and you get a bit more movement. But, yeah, there was many times where I'd surf and couldn't bend my wrists back, so I'd have to like get up with my knuckles. And then, you know, everyone kind of laughed and called my cutback the stiff neck Pauline Menczer cutback. And so like when anyone had a bad neck, they'd always say, I'm doing a Pauline Menczer cutback.
Oh, wow.
And so I think I got quite good upper body rotation because of that.
And at this time, so we're now kind of into the late 80s, early 90s. You're on tour, you're winning events, you're one of the best surfers in the world. Who are your heroes at this point? Who are the folks that you look up to most?
I kind of looked up to everyone that was there before me, really. Like, you know, I was really happy. Like Pam Burridge helped me out a lot, and Jenny Gill. And then, you know, I met a lot of the American girls and like the Smith twins and Kim Merrick, and it was quite lovely back then. Like it was like one big happy family, and a lot of the times we all had to stay together because there was not many places to stay that were cheap. And so like especially in France, I remember this lady opening up her whole house to us, and there was about 15 competitors in the one house. And so yeah, I looked up to them. And then I guess Wendy I felt was my main threat at that time.
Wendy Botha, yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that, yeah, we just had like a very healthy, fun rivalry.
It's always an interesting thing with the Pro Tour where, you know, most everyone that sort of gets there starts out as a grommet, you know, hungry for the success and looking up to surfers and trying to figure out how it all works, right? Like you look at the surfers who are already there and you sort of go, what are they doing and how did they get there and how do I get there? And then suddenly you're there and there's this thing of you're a grommet, you're hungry, you want to make it, you've got these surfers you look up to, maybe you've got pictures of them on your bedroom wall, and then very quickly you're actually overseas at the event and with a jersey on about to compete against those very people. Can you remember that sort of feeling, like competing against your heroes, I guess?
Oh, I totally remember. I remember being at an amateur event and asking Pam Burridge for an autograph. and then her giving it to me, and I was so stoked. And it's even still today, it's such a beautiful, fond memory of that. And then, and looking up to, I remember the only people I actually saw in the magazine was Jodie and Pam. And so I looked up to them, I guess, just because they're the only ones I really knew from the magazine. But then as soon as I started competing, I just had such a massive hunger to want to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kept me going for my career, is even though I was friends with everyone on the beach, just my desire to want to win was so huge that it didn't really matter who I was ever against. I just wanted to win.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if it came down to like a lot of pressure and only like seconds left, there's many times I won heats in the last dying seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always had a really, really strong determination, kind of no matter who it was, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
I think I enjoyed being against the tougher ones to beat.
Yep. Is there a moment in your career that stands out as like your peak moment, maybe the time that you were, most on fire?
There's quite a few good moments in my life. I like the fact that I charged Margaret River. I got wiped out, but I was happy that I went for it because it was so huge. Bells Beach was definitely one of my most favourite places to surf, and I did really well there, winning 3 bells and a second and a third there. So, like history-wise, I did great, but the top of it all would be winning the world title. And it's because when I won, my arthritis was so bad, and like the journey that I went through to get there to win it was, I couldn't even walk. I wasn't free surfing. I was there like over a month before the event to try and get ready. Went to a doctor to try and get steroids in my hip because I was walking so crooked. Flew to another island to get treatment because Rochelle Ballard recommended me see this other guy. And, nicely it did happen because I thought this guy's a bit of a guru. He's like trying to put my body in time, which I was like, what's putting your body in time? But anyway, basically he would touch one part of my body and another part, and he says he was putting it because the timing of it all was out. And I thought, oh, what a load of rubbish. But then when I left there, I was walking about 25% better. So that little improvement was massive when you're going for a world title. And then the day I woke up for the world title, it was like 10 foot. And I'm like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And I remember walking to the water's edge and paddling out. I'd borrowed another person's board, Kim Brione's board. I think it was a 7.6, which is huge. But I wanted that just to be able to get into the waves. And the fear in my throat and in my stomach paddling out was huge. But then as soon as the hooter went, again, my desire to win, I was surfing like there was nothing wrong with me. And then after the heats, I would get out and be hobbling up the beach. So, adrenaline is a phenomenal thing to keep you going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, so that year, 1993, you'd won 3 of the events on tour. We're going into Hawaii. You've got a ratings lead. You're number 1, but you were seized so badly with the arthritis pain that I think at one point you were in a wheelchair. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't in a wheelchair. I was actually getting pushed around in a shopping trolley.
Okay.
So you know how stories change a bit. It went from a shopping trolley to a wheelchair, but I basically should have been in a wheelchair really, because every time I walked, the more I walked, the worse I would walk. So it would my body just was seizing up on me. And, I was just doing granny exercises in the pool, just putting my leg rope on the handrail of the pool and just doing paddling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I was actually staying with Jodie Cooper, and she's like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you surfing? And I'm like, I'm in agony.
Mm.
And, it's really hard to see arthritis because you can't tell by looking. But so, yeah, I wasn't free surfing at all. And, the journey of, I'm not really one to go see doctors to get, shots of steroids in your body, but I was desperate. I was so bad. And then, I was getting put in the shopping trolley because I couldn't walk. I was just getting worse and worse every time I walked. So it was such a nightmare, the lead up to it. But like I said, I like my coach when I was back home in Australia, he looked at me and he just thought I wasn't even going to go to Hawaii. He's just like, there's no way that you can compete. But, I was just adamant that I was going to win. And no, thank God for adrenaline. Yeah, adrenaline definitely saved me.
Uh-huh. And there's another part of this story that that's almost hard for probably someone watching the WSL webcast today to relate to, and that is it's there's a lot of glamour sort of around pro surfing today, but at that time you had no sponsor, as I remember. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, I didn't have sponsors. It was, there was a couple of sponsors I had that gave me product, but there was no one really giving me any money. And, every now and again in the 20 years I was on tour, I'd find a sponsor here and there, but pretty much most of it was self-funded.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's something my mum always taught me. There's a positive in every negative. And the positive was I don't think I would have been as successful as I was if I had the sponsors.
Yes.
But I know I needed to win to survive. So, still to this day, I'm, up the top in being like one of the most winningest surfers. So it's like 20 WCT events I won and 8 QSs. So, without being so successful, my career at any time could have ended. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also why my arthritis got bad is there was so much stress related to money. Like, you learn all the tricks of the trade when you arrive at the airport, like, sneaking your foot under the scales to make sure your boards went over the weight and, having an extra bag that they say, oh, no, sorry, that bag's, you got one bag too much, you've got too much weight. And I'm like, oh, no worries, I'll go send it. And then when I go off to send it, I'll just throw it in the board bag and come back and say, I got rid of that extra bag. And then they wouldn't reweigh it. There's other times there was another pro surfer traveling with me, Prue Jeffries at the time, and I had my partner with me so I could kind of spread out my luggage between her and me, and I had plenty of extra luggage. And so my quick thinking, I grabbed the sticker off the stewardess and put it on her board bag instead of mine because mine was a lot lighter, and then said, oh, you just take that one. So you have to be quick thinking to survive, basically. And so, at the end, my career finished because at the end I wasn't doing as good as I had done and I didn't have any sponsors, and my arthritis just got so bad from the stress of not having money that's why I stopped in the end. I probably would have been a bit like Kelly Slater, I think, and had a really long career because I loved it. But physically, it just wasn't possible.
Yes, that's very tough. And there was a great quote from you in one of the magazines, and I think if I'm reading correctly, it was, "I don't have sponsors because I don't have big boobs, blonde hair, and blue eyes." That was really happening at the time, wasn't it?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I just felt like I could see everyone around me who wasn't as successful as me, and it was always the girls that had that look. And, anytime you saw ads or anything, or even just any kind of promotions, it was always that, beach look that they always were used to. That's the blonde hair and blue eyes kind of look. And so I decided to take the piss out of everyone and did my hair blonde, like bleached it blonde. And because I didn't have blue eyes, I did a blue mohawk in the blonde hair. And then this was at Huntington Beach. And then just went the extreme and put glitter all over my face as well, and just being an idiot really, but just making fun of it, going, okay, if you want blonde hair and blue eyes, I'll give you the best I can. And then I end up winning that event. And so I'm like, see, this is what they need, just someone a bit out there. And I think that's why I started to be extra silly, and the naughty pools of Pauline came out more, and I started loving to entertain people.
Uh-huh. Do you think that still exists today? I mean, you could say that like this exists in the world in general and always has and probably always will. But do you see that in pro surfing today?
Yeah, I think so. Like it's hard because sometimes I think, am I old fuddy-duddy with my way of thinking? Or do the women still feel like they have to sell sex to to make money. And I kind of feel it is a bit in that halfway transition where some of the girls will just be surfers and love it, and then others are making that extra effort to be girly. And, you know, you will still see those ones that are way more feminine get the bigger sponsors, that look, you know, they're still getting taken care of that bit more, I think. And, you know, even in the background, there's still, you know, even within the association, there's still that, you know, old crocodile way of thinking of putting the women second. And, you know, I think too that, you know, when you become a pro surfer, you have to sign contracts. And so those contracts, you basically can't say exactly what you feel about things. And so there would be still a lot of stuff going on. It's just the way society is still biased towards the women. I mean, if it wasn't biased, it would be the same amount of men and women, wouldn't it? On tour, it wouldn't be a different amount. So, you know, once there's true equality, that's, in my eyes, is when it will be even.
Mm-hmm. When you stepped away from competition, was it tricky to kind of transition into what Rabbit Bartholomew calls civilian life?
Yeah, it was really hard for me because I had the really bad attack of arthritis at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, here I was, this really successful surfer, going down to Centrelink to try and get money out of them just for day-to-day living. And, you know, and I told them what's wrong with me, and they're looking at me saying that I'm fine. And so I'm having to get doctor certificates to prove that I'm not fine, I'm not lying. And then I got put to, like, there's a disability part of Centrelink, and so I had to go through them. And then this lady's telling me what I should do, like I should become a carer. And I'm like, I can't even wipe my butt, brush my hair, and you want me to try and care for someone else? And so, like, you know, they make you do courses and stuff like that. So then I end up just doing this brush up your skills course to learn to do computers and stuff like that, because I'm the era where we didn't really use it much. And then, you know, another passion of mine's always been animals. So I started to study to become a vet nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in a vet's for about a year and volunteering there. And I realised some of the treatment of animals that I saw there was so horrific. And all I wanted to do is yell at some of these people. And I'm like, this is not for me. So then I ended up going from there to finding a job in a pet shop. And so, which was really lovely because people just want to spoil their animals and stuff. But, you know, again, a retirement life, it was hard when you're watching these other retired surfers have heaps of money, especially the world champions, or they're getting taken care of by the surf industry still with jobs. And then here I am, like, working in a pet shop. So I started to look at life very differently, and I've had quite a lot of different jobs. Of every job there's a purpose, you know, and people can look down on you in certain things, but you can make the lives of others shine with whatever job you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was even a school bus driver for a while, and people are like, oh, bus driver. And I'm like, some of those kids that were on my bus were so down and out. And then I talked to them about surfing, and some of them got a massive love for surfing through our conversations on the bus. And I changed them from being these sad kids to just, like, loving a sport. So, you know, there's a purpose in every job, really.
Yes. And did you ever? I guess it sounds from what I can tell, you were okay with, though. You sort of found your way through it all. I know so many surfers from my generation kind of fell into substance abuse and things like that. There was a lot of it says, you know, you talked about adrenaline earlier when you won the world title. That adrenaline rush that is kind of so prevalent throughout a pro surfing career, right? Like you're just getting adrenaline rush after adrenaline rush. The come down can be dangerous. Did you struggle there? Or were you okay?
I think I was quite good in that sense. I think the guys that are struggling are ones, like, especially the ones, the more successful they were and the more they had thrown at them, the harder the transition was, because they didn't actually have a tough life, whereas I had a tough life. I was always trying to survive on tour, and I just still felt like I was trying to survive after. So, you know, once I got my first job, I was fine. And I think I partied more. I was the other way around. I think I partied more when I was on tour than when I finished, because when we're on tour, we got it all given to us. It was like free alcohol, free food, just, and then when you're retired, you have to buy it all. So, yeah, I didn't have that problem.
What was it like writing your memoir?
Oh, it took me back through memory lane, that's for sure. It was very hard writing it from so many years before. Like, I went through so many photos and so many pieces of paper and, trying to find out what happened where and what photo was that year from. And then trying to find actually records, like legitimately good records of the Surfing Association, was really hard. It actually makes me realise now why the WSL don't seem to have their stats right, is because they haven't found the right source for it. Because when you hear some of the history stuff they talk about, it's wrong. And so that was actually a major reason why I wanted to do the book as well, is I wanted them to read it and know about my personal history. And I wanted my family to know my personal history, because I never really got that much publicity in my career. And yeah, so I wanted to set the record straight and make sure that my story was told from my eyes. And I also really, really wanted to inspire people. And so, them hearing the struggles that I had to still become world champion and having no money and all that kind of stuff, I thought it's really important. And I'm really glad I did, because after the movie Girls Can't Surf, some of the private messages I got of people inspired from it, and then now doing the memoir, getting 100 more messages of people so inspired from my story and their own personal journeys, I realised just how important it is to share personal journeys to help others. And, that was a lot of the reasons why, because unless you're a huge bookseller, a professional writer, it's not like there's huge money in books, but the stories are important, and that's why I did it.
Absolutely. And what was the most challenging part of the writing, of actually going into your past in that way?
I suppose remembering the stories and the details. So we had to call on a lot of friends who had better memories than me of certain stories to remember it all and piece it together.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also gone through hundreds of photos and picked out all these photos, and it wasn't until I read the book I went, oh, we've got to change these photos, because the photos, it's better if they match the stories. So it was a massive job, absolutely massive, and I was really lucky that Luke Benedictus, who did the writing for me, was incredibly passionate about it. And he spent a lot more hours than he got paid for. He really spent a lot of time on it, and he really wanted to get the details, so people feel like they were there. And, even so many people wrote to me going, oh my God, I really felt like I lived in Bondi and I was sitting on your shoulder while you're skateboarding down Bondi Road. And a lot of work. And even, coming up with a name was funny, because I really wanted the book to be called Freckled Face Freak. And people are like, what? Why did you want it to be called Freckle Face Freak? I'm like, that's how I was introduced on a major TV sports show, the Freckled Face Freak from Bondi. And so I thought that was quite funny. And I thought, I felt like he was saying freak of nature, but everybody else thought freak as in freaky looking, and, and it just goes to show you how different people think of it.
Wow.
But then we ended up calling it Surf Like a Woman, and the reason it was called that is because people said to me my whole career that I surf like a man.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying that you surf with power, it was always, oh, you surf like a man. And so then we've kind of written Surf Like a Man with a W-O in front, Surf Like a Woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Diving into family stuff, I imagine, would be difficult. And you lost your father and your grandfather both when you were 5 years old?
Yeah, really young.
Was it something that was difficult to go back to?
I don't remember a lot of it. I just remember my dad, like, never leaving my mum enough money and her crying a lot. And, like, he worked as a taxi driver, but my mum reckons that he had a mistress. And she was saying that, not that anyone wants anyone gone, but she's like, he wasn't a helpful father. But for us as kids, losing your dad was so weird. And I remember my mum saying that he's gone on holiday because she didn't have the heart to tell us that his was gone. So that's all I remember of that. And I don't really remember my grandfather dying. It's only till I was older and, being a teenager and that it affected me then because, people would always say, like, where's your dad at? And to try and be cool and act like I didn't care, I'd say he's all skin and bones. And they were, what do you mean? And I'm like, he's dead. Yeah, so I'd say that to scare them before they'd want to be mean to you.
Yes, yep.
But yeah, it was hard for my mum trying to bring up 4 kids. So you imagine my father was killed first, and so my mum invited my grandmother. No, sorry, when my grandfather was killed first, so my father invited my mum's mum to live with us, which my mum wasn't real happy about. And then not long after, my father was killed. And so my mum's living with her mother, who she found it really hard to live with, and then 4 children to bring us up on her own.
What part of your life are you most proud of, Pauline?
Yeah, I'd say winning the world title was a big part, but I think I'm proud to be a real community person now. From having it tough and struggling has made me realise that others always need a helping hand as well. And so, like, now a big passion of mine is helping people with disability, like, accessible issues. So I'm always trying to get the local councils and stuff like that to work on their pathways.
So that they're wheelchair accessible, in other words?
Yeah. So, like, at my local beach, there's the dunes and everything was so destroyed and people couldn't get down there at all, like, not even like the older crews. So I ended up just trying to make stairs out of local driftwood and make it a bit more easy to get down the beach. And then there's also an area where there's actually a mobility mat. And so I'm always getting down there with my shovel and making that safer because there seems to be no one that does it.
That's great.
Yeah, so, and then I also go to there's a disability pro surfing event in Byron each year. So I go to that to try and help, because they can't do it on their own. They need actually lots of volunteers to get that happening.
Okay.
And, so even at that event, I made good friends with a guy that only just broke his back. He fell off the 3rd step of a ladder and became good friends with him and started hanging out and just gave me more of a passion to help these people because, their fight is just trying to live every day, trying to help with their fight of just being able to do the things that we can and just, go to the beach.
Yeah, we surfers are very fortunate. I think it's so easy to forget how lucky we are to be able to jump in the water. It sounds like you know it though, having battled arthritis all your life.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by, the illness I've had has made me be a more compassionate person because I know what it's like to be, really seized up and not be able to do things. So I kind of can feel for them very strongly of what it's like. And, just try and be a voice. So I guess on tour I was that voice and I'm still continuing to do that. And even with the Surfing Association, if I see things that aren't right, I'm in the background writing emails to them or Instagram messages saying, hey, that's not cool or that's wrong. Still trying to point out, unjust things.
Yep. Do you follow pro surfing? Are you watching all the girls and what's going on right now?
Oh, absolutely. As we speak now, my partner's in the background going, hurry up, the surfing's on, we need to go.
Oh,
We're just about to head up to Burleigh Heads, and I just absolutely love watching the women surfers now because it's something I've said for a long time that if these girls actually had shapers working with them and getting a surfboard fine-tuned for them, just how far surfing would go, and to see it happening now. And then, they're getting all the boards that they need, and they're getting all the care and sponsorship that they need, that they're going to shine. And for years and years, I'd say, like, I just can't wait for them to do maneuvers that the guys are doing.
Yes.
And now to seeing it, like, unveiling right before your eyes, it's so incredibly exciting.
It really is. Who's your favorite surfer?
I'd have to say Katie, not just because of her surfing, but because I just love that she's just herself. She's not got this perfectly polished interview style, or doesn't worry about saying the wrong thing. She's just herself. And so it's a little bit of me she reminds me of how I was when I was on tour.
I was about to say that, actually. I could see that.
Yeah. And, just that little bit of naughtiness. And, even when she surfs, it looks like she doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But she does. But it just looks like she's like, oh, I'll just cruise here. She's just such a cruisy personality. And, I like a lot of the women for different things. But like I said, she just has that little bit more of a shine for me because she draws different lines in the water that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
These downward carves, and she just has just a different spark, but like I like the other women for different stuff. Like Molly's just massive turns, and then you got the even younger generation like Erin and stuff doing airs, and barrel riding is incredible. It's just so good to see.
Yes. What about where's your surfing at today? What's your relationship like with surfing?
It's really interesting you said that, because I was looking at Tyler Wright's board yesterday, and she's riding like 24.6 litres, and I'm on 25 litres, and I felt really good to be 55 and still on 25 litres. I was going to go a lot bigger, and then I just thought, because I'm a lot slower to my feet now. And then I actually went in I got invited to this event of using, like those trim boards, the extra big long boards.
Uh-huh.
And I realised I was still slow to my feet. And I'm like, I don't need to get a bigger board, because once I'm up, I'm still surf fine. So I'd say, I'm not quite as radical, but I'm still really happy with the way I surf. I just wish that I could get up quicker.
Uh-huh. Are you in the water a lot?
We've had so much rain lately that I haven't been, but if I was to average it out, I'd probably say I have 2 surfs a week.
Okay.
And the thing that I love now is that, again, also helping people with disabilities, it's made me really enjoy everything that I have and what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if I get just one good wave, I'm so stoked. Whereas when I was a pro surfer, like 10 wasn't enough, 20 wasn't enough. You just always wanted more.
Yes.
So it's nice to be satisfied from, just one wave.
Yes. So I've read a little bit about a statue at Bondi, and I'm guessing it's going to be kind of on the lawn overlooking the break, but it's a statue of you celebrating your coming from Bondi and being a champion surfer. But can you tell a little bit about this?
Yeah, so after the movie Girls Can't Surf, the guy that ran, Christopher Nelius, he contacted the Waverley Council saying, do you know that the only world champion to ever come out of Bondi, male or female, is Pauline Menczer? And so he was discussing it with them, and then he launched this campaign of getting a statue with me, and he did it for a couple of weeks. And then the council said to him, you can't do that yet because we have to get permission. Like we have to accept that we're going to get a gift from you. And so the campaign got put on hold for about 3 years. And then after the 3 years, the council said, yes, they definitely want it. And so they've just recently relaunched the fundraiser. So originally they got up to, I think it was around 35,000, and now they've just launched it again. So they're wanting enough money to finish it off. And the campaign right now, they're doing raffles, and they're doing auctions, and they've got a big fundraising day. And they're kind of doing it. It's quite funny actually, because they want the community to pay for it, and they want the community to pay for it because, like, you know how I started my career collecting cans and baking cakes and stuff. They're like, let's get the whole community behind it to pay for it. So it's kind of like uplifting of the community. So yeah, that's all happening now, and yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's going to be at South Bondi on the hill. There's a couple of pandanus trees, and that's overlooking the surf, and it's me holding my surfboard and my skateboard, because that's how I used to get to the beach, was sitting down on my skateboard.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, they want to put it there because that's where I used to run past to go to the beach. So it's pretty incredible that, it's incredible that it's me. So I'm really, really happy about that. But the thing that I find is really amazing is there's no statues of women in Australia compared to the men. Like, the men is like 90-something%, and the women are like 3% or something ridiculous. So not just for women in sport, but just that there's going to be a statue of actually a surfer in Australia, and at Bondi Beach, the most popular beach, is really cool. And so it'd be nice that like Surfing Australia's been helping at the moment, and so we're just trying to get, or the committee's trying to get like a bit more backing from the wider community, the surfing community, to make it all happen.
I love this. And so if people want to donate, they can go to GoFundMe, and then they just punch in Pauline in bronze. Is that correct?
Yes.
Pauline in bronze. I love this. I hope it happens, Pauline. I think it'd be a wonderful thing. I hope that next time I surf Bondi Beach, I pass it as I walk down the grass hill.
Oh, yeah. I just think it's cool because, again, the reason I did my book was to inspire and to know that some little girl's going to go past that and say, oh, she came from nothing and had no sponsors and became a world champion. That's what I want to be. And so, for that to happen would just be so incredible.
Yes. Well, I enjoyed this conversation very much. Thank you so much for making the time for this.
Me too. It's so lovely to hear from you.
Soundings is brought to you by the Surfers Journal and is produced by me, Jamie Brisick, and Jonathan Shiflett. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our theme song is Give Me a Wave by Oscar Matsumiya and Paz Lenchantin. The Surfers Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from Costa Sunglasses, FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. The journal is published bi-monthly. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to visit surfersjournal.com and subscribe. Thank you for listening to Soundings, and until next time.